This is a story about needs and wants. Sometimes what we need may not be what we want. We need more productivity from AI, but we don't want young college graduates going unemployed. And at least some of us may not want our local communities transformed by the building of all those data centers we need for AI.
Warrington is a tiny town, 10,000 people. Picture Norman Rockwell picture Mayberry and Andy Griffith.
Cindy Burbank lives in Warrington, Virginia. She took us to what would have been a data center.
Down this weeded pathway is the 42-acre site that Amazon purchased to build a data center on.
Without data centers to process, store, and distribute information, we don't have AI. With everything from internet search,
we are on an exponential curve, and a relatively steep one,
to drug discovery and approval.
It's going to propel the biological research, AI, in unprecedented ways.
To reap all the benefits AI has to offer, global data center capacity is expected to grow at a rate of 15% per year, and even that may not be enough to keep up with demand. Christine Wood is the data center practice lead at Burns & McDonnell and consults with companies building data centers.
Power is becoming the long pole in the tent to be able to find a data center site. And so it really starts with that, is the power puzzle that we're seeing associated with the data center sites.
But supplying all that power can cause disruption to the communities where data centers want to be located. Not everyone wants a data center for a neighbor.
We're situated about 45 miles to the west of Washington, D.C.
Carter Neville is a native of Warrington, Virginia. He has been the mayor of the town since 2019.
We are heavily dependent upon our meals taxes, and our largest meals tax provider is Chick-fil-A. We are very fortunate to have, as residents, very low taxes in terms of real estate taxes. And so pretty much our largest employer is the school board, followed by the hospital and Walmart.
Warrington's data center journey began in 2023 when the town council voted to consider an Amazon data center on a 42-acre site.
On the upside, it provide a significant amount of revenue, which we are desperately in need of. Our infrastructure is aging. We're behind the 8 ball in a lot of our improvements needed to our water treatment and wastewater treatments especially. We have parts going back that can't even be produced anymore, parts dating back to the 1950s, and we're in desperate need of upgrading that facility for the safety of our community.
But even the economic benefit couldn't outweigh the town's concerns.
Our frustration was the fact that we were being kept in the dark. Then finally, a year and a half later, we learn about it because Dominion is proposing these massive transmission lines. And that is what was like throwing a match onto a powder keg. The citizens exploded, and at first against the transmission lines in Dominion, and then they learned it was tied to the data center. Then we learned from our neighboring jurisdictions what data centers were and the impacts they had. A lot of noise, huge energy generation, monster size to dominate your landscape, and bringing transmission lines and other problems. We did a Freedom of Information Act for the town records. How many people spoke up or wrote in support of the Amazon data center? How many opposed it? And the result was, I'll show you this number, 2,389 of our citizens, our residents, took the time to oppose the data center. They came to the town council meetings, they wrote emails to the town council and so forth. Only 11 people here wanted that data center to happen. And yet we were ignored because Amazon had cut a deal with our elected officials before we even knew about it.
As the opposition grew, it got very, very heated. It got very, very emotional. I think that there was a lot of information that was selectively put out to the community. And so by the time it came to a vote, it was a very divided community. And I'm grateful for the council members that had the courage to do what they believed was right.
Last month, Warrington's City Council voted unanimously on a zoning change that effectively bans data centers altogether. Among the citizens' concerns is the amount of power a data center needs, which would eat up their own access.
I think the biggest concern, and the one that the industry itself really needs to address, is the energy usage. That is just huge. And that is something, as I've pointed out to many people, the data centers are coming. Whether one community says yes or no does not ultimately impact the demand on energy. The industry and the energy producers have got to figure that out. They've got to find a better way of providing that energy without hitting the ratepayers like you and me.
15 years ago, a 12 megawatt data center was a huge data center. Now with AI, what we're seeing on the development side is more than a gigawatt on the campus. And to put that in real terms for you, I'm sitting in Dallas. Dallas takes about 3 gigawatts to 5 gigawatts, depending on the time of year, to power the entire city.
One alternative to drawing the needed power from the grid is small modular nuclear reactors, but even they may not be enough to keep up.
When it comes to AI data centers, they are an order of magnitude more power hungry than the data centers we are used to since the internet age.
K.R. Sridhar is the founder and CEO of Bloom Energy, which just signed a deal to provide power to Oracle for its infrastructure data centers. In the United States, is there an overall approach to addressing that enormous demand for power?
Today, it is a scramble for that AI data centers. Collectively, they're investing more than $600 billion just this year. That's the publicly uttered commitments. That's mind-boggling, right? Almost $2 billion a day to feed this beast.
Sridhar's Bloom Energy was created to do just that, provide clean energy on site, eliminating the need for transmission lines and traditional power generators.
The world is completely digital dependent. Not having power, even for a millisecond, is not an option because critical life functions depend on it, like a surgery happening in a hospital, for example. So we said, power needs to be extremely reliable. You cannot get that redundant reliability at very high nines unless you have on-site power. If you're going to have on-site power, because you're going to be breathing that air when you're sitting in your office or when you're in your bedroom, by definition, it needs to be clean. And it needs to be very efficient, and it needs to be quiet. So this is the principle on which we founded Bloom Energy.
For the citizens of Warrington, Virginia, finding that optimal solution of providing data center power in ways the community can tolerate has been elusive. But that has real fiscal consequences for the town.
We are so revenue strapped, but we're facing about $91 million of investment in our wastewater and water treatment plants. And so, that money is just going to have to come out of debt unless we find revenue streams. Our streets are cracked. We have things that are falling apart, and we're just kind of trying to keep the lights on.
Amazon declined to comment on the status of the Warrington data center. For now, the fate of the project will have to be decided by the courts.
There's a March hearing date on that. There's a citizen group that challenged it in court. And so we're waiting to see what that decision is in March. And I believe that Amazon has probably moved on. But I do expect that, if they remain, if the courts favor the town and Amazon, that they will eventually build there. But as of now, I'm not sure where it stands.
The transformative power of AI means that we need to have it. And that means we need to have data centers, even with their enormous power demands. The question now is where they will go, and whether we can find ways to make them the good neighbors that people in towns like Warrington, Virginia, will welcome.